everyone's recording this. I'm recording, Adam's recording, America's recording it. Will we be banned for a different kind of hate speech after today? Just hate based on the content of a character and people's actions. Who knows?
Entirely justified hate speech. Yes.
Yes, justified hate speech. Man, that would be a dicey podcast title. You get a lot of people listening for the wrong reasons, but a lot of people would listen. What this actually is right now, it's the Away Games podcast. Away Games of Chicago Cubs podcast is one of the things happening right now. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. That's Adam Mamawala over there. What's up, Adam?
Hello.
Hey. And then we have, and then Adam clears the deck and lets our friend Ken join because it's also another podcast. It's a double podcast with Ken Schultz. What's up, Ken?
Hello, Kevin. Hello, Adam. This is also the Three Strikes You're Out podcast, the Outsports baseball podcast, and the first episode of that in 2 weeks because my day to record would have been last Friday, and I couldn't talk. You kind of need to talk in order to record a podcast, and that wasn't happening on Friday.
Oh my God! Yeah, you tested positive for a well-earned reaction, I think. And was it just that like you couldn't talk? Was it that the volume that was coming out of you was too high to register on the microphones, blowing out speakers, or was it no sound whatsoever? I could see it going either way.
I'm going to go obnoxiously English major highbrow and say there is a scene in Infinite Jest where the protagonist, toward the beginning of the book, opens his mouth and nothing but a scream comes out, an unintelligible scream. And that was me. Yeah.
So
I'm full David Foster Wallace levels of depression at this point. So,
and what we're talking about, if you're new to either of these podcasts, these are baseball podcasts, obviously, and the baseball trade deadline just happened. We're all Chicago Cubs fans, and sort of, I mean, I would say almost the star of the trade deadline, but in the way that like sometimes the star of the movie like does bad things and then dies, you know, it's like not really like a heroic journey, but like in terms of news making, our favorite team was right at the top. So yeah, how are you guys feeling?
I mean, I almost feel like we should each give ourselves like 2 minutes per person to just vent. I am wearing the only shirt that seemed appropriate, which is the Cubs like kind of vintagey looking World Series shirt, but also black, because that's how I feel. I am happy that the Cubs won a World Series. I'm happy that they made all of our dreams come true. But I genuinely feel like I'm in mourning, and it's one of those things that like anybody who doesn't really understand the level of fan that we are would be like, come on, it's a baseball team. Like, you're really that upset about a baseball team? Yes, I really am. And like the amount of texts that I got, and I'm sure you guys are the same way, of people literally checking in and being like, are you okay? That is some indication of what has transpired over the past week. And I mean, Kevin, you and I started this podcast, Away Games, that is, in winter of 2018, going into the 2018 season.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I fully anticipated being able to talk through an entire playoff run on that podcast, being able to get to the World Series again and have that episode where we talked about, you know, celebrating a World Series at Wrigley Field. And to get to where we've gotten right now, it is both frustrating and angering and seems like wildly preventable. And as people who live in New York, you and I, to now have to be bombarded with this news about Rizzo and Baez every day. I was on the train. I was on the D train last night going up to my lady's place in West Harlem, which is like literally 15 blocks from Yankee Stadium. People were going up to the Yankee game, and I saw this couple who were like very clearly going to a game, like jerseys, hats, the whole thing. And I started talking to them, and I was like, I assume you're going to the game? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, do me a favor and cheer extra loud for Anthony Rizzo tonight. And I like started getting choked up just saying that to them. I'm like getting choked up saying it now. And the guy's reaction was like all of our reactions, which was like, yeah, what the hell happened? Like, I thought the Cubs were a big market team. What happened with you guys? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And like, that's just how I felt this past week, is like, how did this happen?
Yeah. It feels like it takes a real galaxy brain level maneuvering and a lot of hypotheticals that you're just hypothetically good things that you're assuming that we have been given no reason to assume to make any of this make sense. There's a baseball element where guys on expiring contracts, you deal for players for the future. That makes sense. That makes sense in a vacuum on its own, whatever. Thing is, this isn't a vacuum. This isn't a new regime running the Cubs. Theo Epstein left, but the rest of everybody has been here the whole time. They've been here the whole time. So if you got your big market club into this kind of hole where you could extend nobody from a core of players who are currently still in their prime, and you had to bottom out in this way, why is the group that was there with the big market team leading to this still there in charge of it? That is, right. There's no reason for a team this big to ever get to this point. And when the Cubs bottomed out to begin this run, it was another regime. The new guys came in, and we, I think, all understood, yeah, you bottom out at the beginning, tanking now makes sense. There's no way to respectability and contention at the beginning of this when everybody joined 10 years ago. Now, they're all sitting here. And they just let him go. And yeah, there's no logic to why it's this bad now.
Have you seen the letter that Rickets sent out to season ticket holders, specifically the last paragraph?
Yeah, really covered a lot of ground. Good thing he took the time to write 2 sentences.
Yeah, not the statement, the letter that went out. Where
that I have not seen.
Yeah. The last paragraph, and I should probably look it up to quote it exactly, but he tries to sell the experience of 2012 to 2014 of, hey, wasn't that fun? Wasn't that a joy to see the slow build of a great team? Like, give me 2 minutes.
Yeah. So what Ken's referring, the Cubs owner, at least the most public owner, Tom Ricketts, basically sent a letter out to season ticket holders, I think it was, and sort of explaining, I mean, in theory, explaining what's going on with the Cubs right now, why we're in this moment, why they just traded away the 3 biggest stars on the team. And he's sort of, it was a bunch of paragraphs trying to be like, yeah, winning's fun, but you know what else is pretty cool?
Snake cups.
Yeah.
Did it end with P.S. Having said all of that, ticket prices are doubled for next year?
That's implied, as always. Yeah. I mean, they are the Rickets. This is what he wrote. We understand it might take a little time to process these changes as we integrate new players into our already talented roster, which is forcing Rafael Ortega to do a lot of heavy lifting.
The old Dioner Navarro game. You'll have to see it.
If the past tells us anything, watching a remarkable team come together is extremely exciting and rewarding, especially when everyone is aligned on the goal of winning the World Series. Highly anticipated call-ups, Wrigley Field debuts, immediate big league impact. It's all a part of what makes our game so special. We're grateful for the chance to share in that joy and journey together again. Are you guys loving the joy? Can't you feel it? Can't you feel it, my brothers?
It's just like if you were someone who would read that and buy into it, you're probably not someone who's following the Cubs enough to know anything just happened. Like there's no highly anticipated call-ups. Who? There's Brennan Davis is, I mean, he's down there. I think you would count that one. After that, there's, I think, literally no one you could count as what would be in any sort of normal baseball fan way a highly anticipated.
But Ken, you left out the part where he said use promo code Ortega for 1% off a minimum 2-week stay at the Zachary Hotel.
Yeah.
God, at this point, I'd rather take a stay in the Zachary Hotel than actually go in the goddamn ballpark.
Yeah,
I might take a shit in the lobby. I don't care.
Well, they're gonna have to call the shit up pretty soon and put it on the 40-man. As official team metaphor, yes. It's just like, I mean, it's one thing to be mad about what they've done and the fact that they could not extend anyone. And I think all of our reactions would be very different if they came to if they extended any one of the 3, or even if they didn't trade one of the 3 and it felt like we're going to work in good faith towards something that's going to work here. a core between this person and Wilson Contreras, whatever. But there's clearly no direction going for it. It's tanking out, and trading for guys who, by the way, if you like prospects fun, I like prospects. Basically no one of impact that the Cubs traded for is going to be in the majors until 2024, 2025. And then you're not good immediately. Remember how long it took Javy Baez, an extremely a prospect who's more well-regarded than anyone in the Cubs system right now. Remember, it took him he came up in 2014, and in 2016, he was still fighting for a spot to the end of that year. This is a long ways away from contention, unless the Cubs spend money immediately.
Is there any world in which the Cubs are competent enough to use these prospects to then make trades for impact players now and also sign people and then make this team competitive faster?
There is, but I don't know why we'd trust that would happen. Like, you can't, and there's a world in which trading for high-end, high-ceiling prospects 4 or 5 years from now, that does make sense if you're spending to fill the window between now and then. Right. And to carry yourself through that. I can see how that makes sense, but why do we believe that's going to happen? I'd be happy to say, oh shit, my bad, they were right, if that is what they do in the offseason. But why? I don't know why we would think that would happen. The last big signing was Yu Darvish 3 years ago. They only paid for half of him. Then they sent him away. Before that, we talked about when we started our podcast, the Away Games podcast. It was in the Manny Machado, Bryce Harper offseason when we got Daniel Descalso. I mean, this is, and like Nick Castellanos never got an offer as he was leaving. I don't know. We're having to think back to, like, I guess the signing of Yu Darvish, but that doesn't even count because you only half had him. And then there's just no reason to believe the Cubs are going to spend right now, I guess.
Until they do it. I can't think that that's a path they're going to go on. Like what you described is certainly a decent scenario to compete, but that's also a scenario that requires a core. And we kind of just traded an entire core away. So I don't know the path forward. In terms of
go ahead.
What you brought up in terms of the return we got for all 4 of the guys, Craig Kimbrell included, with this. So one of the things that we talked about in our endless Facebook group chat leading up to this is that, okay, you're going to make trades. At this point, let's see if you can win one, Jed Hoyer.
Yeah.
Because up till now, you haven't. And you've got at least some assets that other teams should at least kind of desire. Let's see if you can get something going on. I mean, the A's got the Marlins got goddamn Jesus Luzardo for Starling Marte. Kim Ng knows what she's doing. So let's see what you got. Right. And when I look at the returns from all 4 of these trades, there's not a win in there. That you could argue certainly that there's an improvement of depth in the minor leagues, but that's also a package of mostly guys who are ranked like anywhere from 5th through 12th from the teams that traded them systems.
Yeah, how do you win the Chafin and Peterson trades and then lose the big trades?
Yeah, and the Chafin and Peterson trades, I think we are saying as a win because at least the Jack Peterson trade would almost be impossible to lose. It was, it's a toss up, or that's somebody who maybe will be something. So none of these deals, I think, are a clear win now. And couple reasons. Part of it is because the kinds of prospects they targeted or whatever got are years and years away. So it's hard, but even those guys aren't, clear number one in an international signing class type prospects. And as Ken mentioned, Luzardo of the A's, who went to the Marlins for a rental of Starling Marte, that's a higher regarded prospect than anything the Cubs got back when we had 3 or 4 Starling Marte level people to deal. And the fact that they didn't get anyone back also, to me, is a little bit of a hint about a plan to tank, or they could just be that incompetent in the trade. But I mean, Luzardo has pitched in the majors, so is that too close to contention to be targeting for what they're looking at as the window? I mean, I guess so. And we just did the last episode of the Away Games podcast. We had Brian Smith on Twitter at Cub Prospects go in depth about literally every prospect the Cubs got back. And Brian is, I think he's a hopeful guy, but he's a serious analytical guy. And the people we're most excited about, the guy who Brian's most excited about was not ranked in the Giants' top 10 prospects. He thinks like this is a guy who's taken a big leap and maybe is exciting, but this is not, as Ken says, you had the biggest group of talent to sell off that hopefully the Cubs will ever have in our fucking fandom lifetime at this point. And there's not one, holy shit, we got this guy? Not one, Yeah.
One thing, especially people who are pushing for a massive sell-off, I think either choose to ignore or don't understand, is that the incredible success of the rebuild from 2012 into 2015, I mean, that doesn't happen on a regular basis. That is like so many things falling into place. Also, a great plan executed by a Hall of Fame executive, which we don't have anymore, but. This is the one chance that Jed Hoyer, assuming that this is his plan from the beginning, was going to have at getting as big a haul for as many trade pieces as he was going to be able to unload. And this is the best you can do is Nick Madrigal, a teenager and a hyphenate who's played all of 6 goddamn games. Like, unimpressed, very unimpressed.
Yeah, it's like Adam made a reference on Twitter to watching the Bulls when there was still in that 98-99 season, when there was still a couple pieces, I guess the equivalent to Hendricks and Contreras still being here, while it was filled in around. And that made me think of how much of a Jerry Krause like beginning Jed Hoyer is having, where yeah, he was a part of a very good team. And I don't know, maybe, he was the general manager under team president Theo Epstein during the best era of Cubs baseball in history. That's not nothing. But now that he's been in charge, I don't know, you can, I guess, I'm still open to the idea that this guy is a good general manager. As a team president, he's dog shit. I don't know if you guys heard anything going on the radio this morning. Anthony Rizzo went on ESPN 1000 and talked about Jed Hoyer's comments yesterday, where he said, I'm not going to talk about the extension talks we had, but all these guys said they wanted to stay here, and that's not how they acted in negotiations. So Hoyer goes out, steps on his dick like immediately, and then Rizzo was on the air today saying, I don't know why you would talk about that. I don't know why you would say that. There's one common denominator: no one signed. I like already Jed Hoyer in the public facing part, forget the baseball element of this, the public facing part, he's been an F. I mean, he said there was no rebuild 3 weeks ago. He said, literally, this is not going to be a rebuild. And then several days ago, he said, I don't know what a rebuild is. He said he doesn't know what you would call a rebuild. And then yesterday, he literally said, we'll see. So, I mean, this is 3 weeks.
He is in the span of less than 3 weeks, 1 week. He has lied more, and he has alienated more players than Theo Epstein did over 9 years. That's a feat. Good job, I suppose. Well done. But
look, I mean, the most upsetting thing about this is that the Cubs have run us through the mud so much that the three of us, 3 mild-mannered, nice men, are doing a podcast where we all sound like some version of Mad Dog Russo. Like, do you realize how upsetting that is, that this is where we've gotten? That any of it, have you guys watched an inning of Cubs baseball since Friday? Because I haven't.
Yeah, I have.
Oh my God, Ken, stop
perfect.
it.
That's a perfect tone.
and
I watched highlights.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No. Oh, Ken.
I watched the highlights of Ortega hitting 3 home runs.
I did watch that. I watched on my phone. I can't stay away. But the point, I've been more into seeing how my beloved triumvirate are doing on their new teams. That's what I'm watching first. I have not sit down and watched any Cubs baseball live. And then at the end of the day, I check the Yankees box score, the Mets box score, the Giants box score on Sunday. And then I see what happened with the Cubs, just because I want to root for these guys. But how are you guys doing? How are you guys doing? I'm not doing great.
So
I'm sad.
I have spent this is the second time I've spent an entire therapy session talking about the Cubs this year. So my therapist is essentially becoming drive time on the score at this point. Northside Harry, you're on.
That's outstanding.
Yeah,
Dr. Francesa.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh Lord.
Is your therapist a Cubs or baseball fan?
Not at all. No. Nope.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I'm tuning him into what advanced level sabermetrics means too along the way. So he's learning a lot, I think. Yeah. I think he said when I brought it up this week that when he heard, even he heard the news about the giant bloodletting, and he was like, "Yeah, I kind of thought of you." So okay, you knew where this was going. Great.
Yeah. Then you just cut to him like really stretching out before the session, just like going through a Rocky montage. Like, oh boy, they traded everybody. Hold my calls. Yeah.
He now knows more about Anthony Rizzo's slump in June than he ever intended. So I was out for a walk on Thursday afternoon after my day job, and was about 2 minutes away from coming home when Adam, you texted us saying it was Rizzo to the Yankees, and it was shock, like it was numbness for a couple of minutes as I kind of got back into my apartment. And then I just kind of collapsed in the bed and just bawled. And it was an ugly, ugly cry. Like it's not like just tears. It was like guttural, mixed in with just random fuck yous at nobody.
Fuck yous at nobody. Also a good podcast title for sure.
That's the subtitle of every Joe Rogan episode, I think.
Yeah. Have you considered? Yeah.
So that was the reaction to Rizzo, was I think the realization of, oh shit. We all knew it was happening, but now it's like, oh, here it comes. And that was just like a whole new level of just like wave of sadness that descended on me. And like it was, even after I was done getting that out of my system, like I was still just like laying in bed like Brian Wilson did, doing nothing at all for the rest of that night. Just didn't want to do anything. It was like a low-level baseball depression, and I don't mean to diminish like actual mental health problems. It was baseball is carrying a lot of weight in that. It's just a baseball thing, but nonetheless, I didn't want to do shit that night.
Yeah,
and the next day, I feel almost bad because the next day was just kind of a fog of anger, but then just kind of a sense like a brain fog that wouldn't let up. And I almost feel bad that I couldn't give Javy or Bryant the emotional reaction they deserved because Thursday was so profound for me.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And Rizzo was chronologically the first of those guys to go. And also the one I thought that there was the least chance that he would go. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he did, I think it's obviously not just about Rizzo. When Rizzo goes, the emotional reaction to that is also somewhat the Javy and KB reaction, because you feel like, oh, well then they're gone. It's everything all at once. And I just couldn't believe they did that. And I think it's obviously it's like baseball is not all of life when we talk about like, oh, low level baseball depression, but it is something that, your life is whatever it is this minute. And a lot of the minutes of our lives have been wrapped up in this thing that is ultimately nice. It's ultimately a thing we love, and it's never been as good as it was, for us. And we never thought it could get as good. So we never thought it would get as good as it did. And then the fact that it's ending, it has to end at some point. But the fact that it's ending in such an unnecessary, messy, and flat out baseball stupid way is just like, it feels... It's the end of an era of our own lives too. Literally, I proposed to my wife the day Theo signed with the Cubs. Like it was October 12th, 2011, and I woke up in a Vegas hotel room, saw that announcement. I knew I was proposing that night. I had a plan, and I was like, "Well, this is a good beginning to things." So it sucks that I have to get divorced now, like, because to like completely just like wrap the storyline.
Do I get the Contreras jersey back?
Yeah, I think I have to give Ken if I get divorced, it has to rotate. The Contreras jersey I got in Adam's divorce goes to Ken. But like, I mean, it's such a marker of the times of our lives, right? I mean, this, and it is the end. And I think that's why I'm not like, I am more now than I used to be, but I'm not a person who would cry much. But like I did when I was at Kerry Wood's last game. And Kerry Wood was pulled out, and I remember being surprised myself and being like, why is this happening to me? And I think it was because it's like, this is a guy who was a young man who I saw when I was a young man. And then it's like a reflection of my own mortality. And I think that's something where it's like the times of our lives ending, you know?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, and I don't want to like overstate this, and obviously like Rizzo and Baez and Bryant are alive and well and on new teams, but like
doing very well.
when Kobe Bryant died, it hit me in a way that I would never have anticipated, because it's not like I'm a Lakers fan. But I think in retrospect, what I realized was like his career was my life. Like I started I was a huge NBA fan, and I was in 5th grade when he was a rookie, and by the time he retired, I was an adult. I had gone through every level of school. I had gone through college. I had gone through relationships, and like he was a constant in my life. And that's kind of how I feel about this Cubs core. And I think there's something kind of poetic and devastating about the fact that like they were traded in the same order that they were brought into our lives. Like we had Rizzo, and then we had Baez, and then we had Bryant, and then one by one they go. And for me, especially, like, I know obviously, Kevin, you grew up in the East Coast in some ways, but like largely your formative years were in Illinois. But for me, like I grew up middle school, high school, college in New Jersey, surrounded by a ton of Yankees and Mets fans. And like I have so many people, mostly who like understand what a baseball fan I am, who are being cool about it. But then people who are just like dog shit baseball fans, like, you know, sending me stupid texts and like giving me grief about this whole situation. And like, I actually am stupid enough that once Baez was traded on Friday, I was trying to convince myself that maybe that meant that KB would be the one to get an extension. I
did too.
And I was on a train. I went to New Jersey just for like a day and a half. My mom was picking me up from the train. My train got into the station in New Jersey at 3:56. So this is like as the trade deadline is happening. And like as I'm stepping off the train, I read Kris Bryant to the Giants. And I just like sat silently in a car with my mom, and like she's seen this my whole life. She knows how it goes. But like I was like, I'm really happy to see you, but like I'm just gonna need to like sit here quietly for a bit. And like the only way I can describe it, I'm gonna make the most obscure reference possible, as I always do. You ever see the Muppet Christmas Carol?
Absolutely.
Okay,
as much as I can.
There's that scene. It's a fantastic film. But you remember when in the like dark timeline, Tiny Tim dies, and the little pig children are like, "Where's Dad?" And Miss Piggy's like, "I think he's walked home a bit slower these past few nights." That's how I feel right now. I'm Kermit. There's the pep in my step is gone. I should have known that it was an emotional risk to tie up this much of my happiness in a baseball team owned by Trump supporting billionaires. Here we are.
Yeah. It's I tweeted out I think as the purge was happening, that this is the worst day to be a Cub fan, at least for me, since Game 6 of 2003, which also ended with me sobbing pitifully on my dad's shoulder. Only this time, my dad was 40 minutes away, so I couldn't even have that. But it struck me that I remember after they won the World Series in 2016, one of my lines of thinking was, well, I'm sure they'll be bad again, but it will never get that level of painful bad. And oops, I suppose.
Yeah, big oops. I mean, I also said this is, I think I said this in the chat as well, but it's like how after Obama was elected, I was like, all right, we're not as dumb as we used to be, maybe. Like, I think we've at least raised the basement level of how dumb we're going to be. We went from George W. Bush to Obama, and, you know, whatever, things aren't perfect, but okay. And then, man, I biffed it in exactly the same way I biffed it with the Cub stuff. Right? Same thing. I was like, Theo's here. This group is here. There's a level of competency that we're going to have moving forward. And even the fact, whatever happens in the future, if they end up getting multiple all-stars in these deals somehow, that just happened, whatever happens in the future, bottoming out, if the Cubs aren't winning the division next year, this is an incompetent bottom out. Incompetent or like integrity free bottom out while they count money. Because also just it's a thing I've also mentioned on the podcast before, but you get some weirdos jumping on to like defend the Rickets family, defend baseball owners, also the people who are just like pro sell-off without giving a shit what you get back in the sell-off, just liking the selling anything. I don't care the money I get back. I just like selling things. But some of those people talk about how the Cubs have had a high payroll some years recently. Every year the Rickets have owned the team. They've made a lot of money. Every year counts. And average, they are between 9th and 10th in payroll during the Rickets era. So that's how much money they've been pocketing for a team that always makes more than that. They're between 9th and 10th overall. So just keep that in mind as they're tearing down once again 10 years into their reign, where the value of the team is quintupled into the billions, and they refuse to spend next year.
Well,
our biggest mistake is faith in humanity.
Yeah.
What's that? Yes.
that's kind of evergreen. That's beyond just the Cubs. One thing that I'm curious about is that I don't know that Cubs fans want to be lovable losers ever again. Like, I really don't think that I don't live in Chicago. I don't live in Chicago. You do, Ken. I have no interest in going to Wrigley Field. Like, I'll be in Chicago in late September, and I was planning on trying to go to a game. I really don't know that I want to. And I'm kind of curious to see if the Rickets are hoping that it's like, hey, it's still summer in Chicago, people will come out to the old ballpark. It would be kind of satisfying if they don't. And I'm not saying people should boycott Wrigley Field and never go to a Cubs game again. But I don't know if it's going to be as much of a playground for the cocksuckers as it once was. And I think my hope and your hopes as well was that, like, you're not going to assume that the Cubs are going to win the World Series every year. But sustained excellence is what we were promised. And my hope was this Cubs team can be the Braves of the 90s. They can win the division pretty much every year, or the Dodgers in recent memory. And then once you get to the playoffs, we see what happens. But this should not be happening at this point in like the Epstein-Hoyer era. It just shouldn't.
No, and I can give you one example that springs to mind immediately in terms of what you said about the Chicago fan base and how much they want to go to Wrigley. That I got a text on Saturday, and this is one person, a sample of one, so bear that in mind. But a good friend from high school who is a fan at our level and is in a season ticket package with a couple other people. And he just told me, yeah, I'm done. I'm dumping these. Do you want any of them? And I named like one date because the Reds were in town, and maybe I'll see Joey Votto hit 5 home runs that game. But,
yeah.
Honestly, like, I was like, do I want any of these for free right behind the plate? So yeah, that's everybody right now. As I unless you're some kind of masochist or, well, they're doing this just in time for the Crosstown Classic as the first homestand back. So they're going to have a full Wrigley.
Slap in the face.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of White Sox fans. At that game. And I could be wrong on this, but I thought I saw that Wrigley has not sold out yet. No. Officially this year, right?
No, I think the biggest crowd they had is 39 at the first Saturday of that Cardinals,
which is very close, but yeah.
But yeah, and for that Red Series, they were lucky to draw 30 for each game.
I'm glad you were there. I'm glad you got to see a couple of those games.
I went to the last good game.
You saw the Javy walk-off.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to go down as the last moment for this group. The last time they all uplifted all of us. Rizzo hit a 2-run homer in the first and showed us all the heights that they were capable of. And I'm it hurts now and it's going to hurt forever, but at some point I'll look back at though and go, I went to that and the John Lester, Kyle Schwarber welcome back game. And I'm so thankful I got to go to see both, because those are far and away going to be the only 2 good memories of one of the worst baseball years of our lives. And I guess I'm kind of glad that at least we've got those. In terms of the attendance, that made me think that there was a piece, I think, on Prospectus a while back that talked about how a lot of owners, and this is a real cynical way of reading into this, but I'll bet this is part of Rickets' mindset too, that they've kind of identified that if you charge extra exorbitant prices for tickets, you actually might profit more, even though you don't sell out the park than like you used to, which is just a pathetic way to go about life.
Yeah. You can't.
It wouldn't surprise me.
No, wouldn't surprise me either. You can't teach soul. You can't coach a soul into somebody, and it sucks to because I even if this is how we typically feel about people who are billionaires who own sports teams, there's a very limited number of not awful people who own sports teams. You still don't want to believe it's like the worst you can think of at every turn, but it so often is. And when it comes to like going to Wrigley now, I honestly, if it was if it was a friend of mine who was like in Chicago and had never been to Wrigley, I would go with them because they should get to see it if they're in town. But that's the only way I would go to a game right now.
But I mean, I'm going to be out there with my lady in September, and I don't know that I want her first experience to be sad Wrigley. I really don't.
Right.
I mean, it's a more accurate representation of Cubs baseball.
That is true. That is historically that is very true.
And this moment, well, and I think what you were saying about lovable loser stuff, Adam, is that I don't think Cubs fans are interested in that. Also, you literally can't be anymore because the only thing that made that a thing was that we were the worst of all time. Is that I say this in like a way that I was okay with? Is that we waited longer than everybody ever? That's the only way that losing is interesting. Is if you've done it in a way that it's the longest so that the payoff is going to be the biggest, and that's dead. That's dead. We're not a team behind the eight ball anymore. We have all the money. We continue to bring in all the money in a major market, in a place where people want to go, and we had talent in their prime here days ago. So you can't ever become a lovable loser again.
Yeah. We're the Tigers. We're the Pirates. I mean, there's nothing lovable. There's nothing exciting about what they are. They're just bad. They're dreck. And that is who we have voluntarily chosen to become.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like getting to this point through both incompetence and then choosing it is like two different ways to be really mad about this. And here's the thing, like the extensions that the Cubs with the core here that they couldn't come to, it's not like that the option of extending these guys just popped up this year. We've had them here the whole time. You could talk to them for years. You could have made a choice, one of them to build around at any point. And if you can't get these three guys who wanted to stay here, they've said as much, and even though Jed pushed back on it, we saw Kris Bryant take the phone call and break into tears in the dugout. If you can't negotiate an extension with these guys who actively want to be here, what in God's name would give you confidence that he can sign anybody else?
Yeah. And it's not just that. I mean, Anthony Rizzo also reportedly said to Bruce Levine that if the ship is going to sink, I want to sink with it, or words to that effect. And that's also someone that apparently you can't find an extension with. And I wanted to kind of tie that into also what you mentioned about soul earlier, Kevin, because this to me it's the most galling part of all this. Is it's not just unloading great players and players that we've seen grow up and have come to know and love. It's also the guys who did it. And there's an extra human level to that only a few players ever get to know, like Big Papi with Boston, for example, or Pedro. There's only a handful of guys who mean that much historically to a franchise. And all three of those guys were that. And the fact that level of humanity means nothing is galling to me. That they're still just at the end of the day guys who apparently became too expensive for Tom Ricketts' taste, despite the fact that they are the ones who accomplished and made our dreams come true, like something that no other beloved Cub in our lifetimes, in our father's lifetimes, in our grandfather's lifetimes was able to do. That meant nothing. And that is the true dagger in the heart to me in all this.
And it'll never happen again.
Right.
Yeah. Forgive me, Adam. I also wanted to touch on this too, because I wanted to make sure to mention this. that one of the narratives that has sprung up in terms of the people who support the teardown is that these Cubs are a disappointment because they weren't able to accomplish anything after winning the World Series. And you can probably hear the emotion already a bit in my voice on that. And I want to say to that first of all, name me the dynasty of baseball from the past 5 or 6 years, since 2016. What dynasty has there been? Anything? Any takers? Anything at all? No?
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And second of all, sure, yeah, they didn't fulfill their destiny as the team that went back to the World Series over and over and kept on getting rings. So you're telling me that winning the greatest World Series of our lives, ending the 108-year drought, making everybody's dreams come true, that's not enough for you. Okay, you'll never be happy.
You'll never be happy. Absolutely. That's the answer. Also, they made the Final Four 3 times in a row. You know, I mean, and when you talk about what's the other dynasty? Yeah. Are we saying the Dodgers? If you want to say the Dodgers are the team of this era, okay, the only World Series they won was that bullshit last year. Was the 60? Yeah. I mean, that's the only one they have. So I don't know do you like that they also went to a World Series and lost to the cheating Astros, I guess. I mean, okay, but like there's no team that functionally in a championship way did outperform this core during this era. And yeah, if you don't count that as a success, man, what a bummer you must be, like all the time forever. And we're saying that as we're having our bummer hour here on the podcast, but you know, I mean, the reason it's sad now is because it was so good. And also just in a less important point than you just made, Ken, but as far as like people supporting the teardown, it's a lot of them are saying, well, this wasn't working in terms of this core of players. Yeah, but you don't fix something by getting rid of the best part of it. Like, yes, this team wasn't working, but these are individually good players, and maybe you don't keep all of them, but you want good players. They weren't not winning because of their best players. Like, that's not how any of this works. You know, if your car is not, if your car has a flat tire and it's not getting somewhere, you don't throw the engine in the trash. Like, you fix the parts that don't work.
Right. I mean, I think for me, at the risk of being overly dramatic, like the way that I felt last week, and I hope this changes, is that as someone who was going through a divorce concurrently with Ben Zobrist in 2019, one of the hardest parts about that experience was that it was this simultaneous experience of like losing your future and then also losing your past, because it was ending so painfully that any of those happy memories from the past, I couldn't think of them anymore without knowing how that story ended. And that's how I feel right now when I see those highlight videos that the Cubs put up, and shout out to them for giving KB a minute and 40 seconds.
Yeah.
When I see those videos and all of those memories and all of those things that we have from this core, right now I really can't watch them and enjoy them and experience the happiness that they brought me at the time, because I know how it ends. And that really sucks. Like, I don't know how I would feel if the Cubs had just stood pat and maybe, you know, traded Kimbrel and a couple other relievers and, you know, stuck it out with Rizzo, Baez, and Bryant till the end of the year, and then none of them re-signed. And then we were sitting here saying, well, you know, if that was going to be the case, we should have at least gotten something for them. But I don't feel like it would have been as painful knowing that at least they made the decision to not stay.
Yeah.
For me, for me, a lot would be different if they chose one of the three. If it was just one of the three, I think that would have said a lot. And from both an emotional and from a baseball perspective, honestly, because it's also, this is about keeping a winning team on the field too, on top of all the emotion, and the fact that they chose none, could get nothing done, build no direction when they had every advantage with these three very good all-star caliber players. It hurts, and also it's like I have no belief that these guys know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the logical thing to do would have been, okay, yeah, we pick one of the guys from the core. He is the guy who is not just the hero of the past, but the transition guy that is going to be the great player that then brings up the next group of Brennan Davises, and then whoever else becomes great behind him, hopefully like Ed Howard or something like that. But that's obviously the path they didn't go. And yeah, that's heartbreaking to hear that. And you know, I am somewhat in agreement. I haven't been able to watch any of the tribute videos. I haven't even tried, honestly, because it's just too raw and too much right now. I do think, at least for myself, the passage of time, once we get past the real hurt of all this, I don't know how long that's going to take, but that those memories will be good again, because that doesn't change. That moment in time and the exultation and the release and the joy, that still exists. Even though we know how it ends, it doesn't change how we felt in that moment. It doesn't change what that moment meant to every one of us. And that's a tribute to the players, and it's not a tribute to Rickets or to Hoyer or any of those assholes. It's what those players accomplished. They still mean something to us. And that's why I think, Adam, you're still, and why we're all still kind of following their exploits with their new teams right now with interest, even though we have certainly no rooting interest in the Mets or the Yankees or the Giants. Those guys still mean something to us and will forever. And I think at a certain point, once we get past, I guess, the proper grieving stage, which again, don't mean to minimize actual grieving, the baseball grieving stage, we'll be left with, okay, we still have these really happy memories, and you can't take that away from us, you motherfuckers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. And and for me, I think a little bit of it's, I don't know how you guys are, but I don't, at this point, seeing how they've handled things, and Hoyer specifically, I don't expect any of the three to come back in the offseason, even though you absolutely could. But there's still part of me, the irrational childlike fan in me, still sort of can't fully say bye until they sign with someone else this offseason, which it's like, on one hand, you'd think maybe that's a little hopeful, but also it sucks, because it's like, I got to fast forward to what, March or April to be like, okay, now I can put a verdict on this. So yeah, I really thought there was a good chance until the last day or so that someone would come back. At
this point, the more likely scenario to me is like, you remember when Scottie Pippen came back in like 2003? Like, there was like a new regime, Krause and all those cronies were gone. Like, I almost feel like it'll be, in 2026 when the Cubs are good again, then maybe like Rizzo or someone comes back and helms like the new Cubs team, which would be amazing. That would be great. As kind of the, veteran.
Almost like an Arrieta, but good comeback.
Sure.
Perfect. I mean, like,
exactly.
I think is exactly. I had that same thought where it's like, you can absolutely see DH coming to the National League, Rizzo later in his career possibly coming back for a year, but it's like, man, it just doesn't have to be like that. And really lucky to have these guys here for as long as we did, and it just sucks because this is the
best time of our lives as Cubs fans. It was the best time of our lives.
Yeah, and that's not going to change.
Yeah.
Another turning point on the road.
Yeah, man. Are there any points we didn't touch from this sort of podcast team up cathartic hour of anger and disappointment?
I feel like I said what I needed to say. You guys have anything else?
Fire Jed, sell the team.
Honestly, yeah. If you can't, this is my slight caveat, giving them a chance for some grand plan that we're all mistaking it on. If you don't contend in 2022, fire Jed, sell the team. I absolutely. There's no patience for not contending in the most one of the couple worst divisions in baseball, most contendable divisions. If you can't compete this deep into your tenure, 10 years into ownership, 10 years into GM and president from Jed Hoyer, if you can't compete, then fire Jed and sell that team.
Can the Tribune Company buy them back? I've heard print media. I've heard print media is doing very well these days.
Yeah. Can we reincarnate William Wrigley at this point?
Yeah. Cool. Well, you can find us on Twitter at Away Games Pod, and as far as us individually, I'll let us all go around and do that. I'm at Kevin McCaff if you want to find me on any of the things.
I'm at Adam Mamawala. And Ken, where can people find you and find your podcast?
I am at Ken Schultz _ on Twitter, at Ken Thin Guy on Instagram, and every Friday on the Outsports Podcast Network is a new episode of Three Strikes.
Heck yeah. Thanks for doing it, guys. And maybe we'll see each other. We'll see each other in and we're actually all going to go to a baseball game in Denver, Colorado to see the Rockies play the Padres. That's where we're meeting up for baseball.
That's a competent team. Go Padres.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cubs. All right, have a good weekend.
Mountain time to escape the Cubs. Yeah.
I'll take it.